PG and Research, Department of Commerce. Role of patents in the development of Indian pharmaceutical industry in association with Intellectual Property Rights, the IP Cell, and IQAC of St. Peter's College, Kolancheri. I invite our Head of the Department of PG and Research, Department of Commerce, Dr. Venugopalan KV, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning to all. Welcome Dr. Shaju Varghese, Principal, St. Peter's College, Kolancheri, Dr. Reggie K. Joseph, the resource person for the day, my colleagues, and dear participants. Thank you for joining to this webinar for today's webinar. Today, we are presenting role of patents in the development of Indian pharmaceutical industry, presented by Dr. Reggie K. Joseph, Associate Professor, Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, New Delhi. Intellectual property rights are legal rights that provide creators protection for original works, inventions, or appearance of products, artistic works, scientific developments, and so on. The purpose of intellectual property law is to encourage creation of a wide variety of intellectual goods. I would like to mention Gilead issue on COVID-19 antivirus vaccine. Gilead Sciences is an American biopharmaceutical company headquartered in Foster City, California, that researches, develops, and commercializes drugs. Gilead filed its patent application with the Indian Patent Office in April 2017, and the patent had been granted in February 2020. Gilead submits new drug application to US Food and Drug Administration for peculiarly remdesivir, that's antivirus vaccine for the treatment of COVID-19. Thus, Gilead has the exclusive rights to prevent third parties from the act of making, using, selling, or importing that product in India under Section 48 of the Indian Patents Act 1970. The issue regarding Gilead and Indian pharmaceutical industry and future of Indian pharmaceutical companies is a debating area. I think this webinar will definitely throw some insights regarding the future of pharmaceutical companies and the patent and its future, throw some insights in this matter. Thank you all. I once again welcome all to this webinar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite our principal, Dr. Shaju Varghese of St. Peter's College, Kolancheri, to give away the principal's remarks.
Comment all for the webinar. First of all, I welcome today's resource person, Dr. Reggie K. Joseph, and the head of the Department of Commerce, Dr. Venugopalan, other faculties of Commerce Department. I would like to take this moment to congratulate each and everybody to conduct a very relevant subject related webinar. They have conducted already 3 seminars, two webinars already. One is in the area of job related matter, and second one is Ayurveda and the health related matter, and the third one is entirely a different one and a very current and a relevant topic they are selecting, and a future resource person is for selected to conduct this webinar. I congratulate the department. At the same time, I giving all the best for the webinar, and the participants make use of maximum for this webinar. Thank you very much.
Now I invite our key speaker for the day, Dr. Reggie K. Joseph, to present his topic. Before that, a short profile of the speaker. Dr. Reggie K. Joseph is a hardcore academician. He took his doctoral degree from JNU Delhi with a career profile starting from the Center of Development and Human Rights, New Delhi. He has numerous writings and research works, mostly on the issues of international political economy and science, technology and development. Mr. Joseph has published a book on Indian pharmaceutical industry and public policy in post-reform India with Routledge. Presently, he is associated with ISID, the Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, from 2015. Let's hear it from our speaker, Dr. Reggie K. Joseph. Just here for you. So
Thank you. Respected Principal, Professor Shaiju Varghese, Professor Venugopalan, Head of the Department, Professor Ampilli, and my friend, Professor Basil, and my dear friends. I am very privileged to give this talk in this prestigious college in Kerala. When Basil contacted me to give a talk in the area of intellectual property rights, we came down to this particular topic as it is an area of my interest and specialization. Whether we know or not, every day we come across a number of intellectual property rights. We read books and articles that involve copyrights. So sometimes the copyright is with the author, sometimes it is with the publisher. And all of us use mobile phones. It has a combination of variety of intellectual property rights. It has patents for software, copyrights for software, because in some jurisdictions, software is copyright protected. Then it has design patents, other patents. So it involves various kinds of intellectual property rights. And very often we go to medical shops to buy medicines. And now this is the monsoon season. So all of us would have a stock of very commonly used medicines like paracetamol. We go to a shop and say paracetamol. So sometimes we get Crocin, sometimes we get Dolo, sometimes some other brand. All these are produced by different companies. For example, Crocin is produced by GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. So the Crocin is a trademark of that company. Dolo, that is a trademark of another company, Micro Labs. Paracetamol is a chemical name. So when we say the chemical name, we will be given different brands of that particular drug. This is a case of paracetamol. But when we come to some other drugs, for example, abatacept, so that is an injection used for treating arthritis. So many of us would be having old people in our homes, and they would be having, some of them would be having this problem. So if we have to treat them, this is a very effective injection. But this drug is supplied by only one company, Bristol Myers Squibb. And the price is very high. 30,000 rupees per injection. So when we ask for that chemical name, unlike in the case of paracetamol, we will get only one particular brand. This is because it's patented by that particular company. And that is why the price is so high, 30,000 rupees, which many of us would not be able to afford. So there are different kinds of intellectual property rights. And patent is one of such IPR. So what is intellectual property right? The World Intellectual Property Rights Organization defines it as creations of mind which have commercial value. So these are creations of mind which have an economic value. So that is what IPR is about. Can we now go to next slide where the significance of patent system is mentioned? So what is, so now let us come to the patent system. So what is the significance of patent system? Patent system is an important mechanism for promoting innovations. As we know, innovations is the process of translating scientific knowledge into commercial products. It involves a lot of efforts and financial resources. If the innovations are not protected, then the innovators will have no incentive to innovate, because all the efforts, all the resources they put in, ultimately somebody else will be able to take the benefit. So there will be the problem of free riding. So patents provide a system, a mechanism to avoid the issue of free riding. And in the patent system, the state provides a monopoly rights to the innovator over the patented product for a limited period. It is not infinite, it's for a limited period. The innovator will have the right, exclusive right, to produce, sell, export, import, or use that particular patented innovation. So that means without the consent of the patent holder, nobody else will be able to use the innovation. And the patent system also has a tremendous value for the well-being of society. When I apply for a patent, I am expected to disclose the knowledge, disclose the technology involved. So in the patent application, I am supposed to explain what the technology is all about, so that somebody going through the patent application will come to know what this technology is all about. In other words, the patent system is also acting as an instrument to facilitate future innovations. The dissemination of knowledge is taking place through this disclosure option. And innovation also plays an important role in economic development of all countries. A study done in US, it estimated that 87% of the increase in gross output of US economy during the period between 1909 and 1959 was due to technological change. So what we need to say is that promoting innovations is very critical for the economic development of any country, and the patent system precisely aims to do that. Can we now go to the next slide? As I said, the patent system, through the patent system, the state grants monopoly rights to the innovator over the patent innovation. But it raises two major concerns. One is in terms of market competition. As the patent holder has the exclusive right over the use of patented innovation, it may be able to prevent others from entering the market. we know that in my childhood days, when I was a student in school, making a phone call from Kottayam to Idukki, it used to take about 5 rupees per minute. But now, more and more telephone operators came in, and now it's very cheap, less than 50 paise per minute. So this is the effect of competition. If there is a monopoly, the competition may be curtailed. So that is one major concern. An associated concern is that sometimes this patented technology may be required for developing something else, and the patent holder may not be willing to give a license. So in that case, the future innovations will be affected. So one set of concern is on the competition. Similarly, the other major concern is on prices. Since the patent holder has the monopoly right, the innovator would decide the price. So normally the demand and supply conditions determine the price. But in this situation, the patent holder would tend to fix a monopoly price, which normally will be much higher as compared to a competitive price. So this pricing is also another major concern arising from this monopoly rights. So the first global instrument for the protection of IPRs was established in 1883. That is also known as the Paris Convention. It was for the protection of industrial property. Then after 3 years, the Berne Convention came into existence for the protection of literary and artistic works. Later, both these conventions were merged into the United International Bureau for the Protection of Intellectual Property in 1893. In 1970, it was converted into a specialized agency of UN known as World Intellectual Property Organization. The aim of WIPO is to promote intellectual property globally and ensure cooperation among different IP regimes across the globe. Another important mechanism currently existing for the governance of global IP system is the TRIPS agreement of World Trade Organization, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. The TRIPS agreement has established the minimum global standards for the protection of intellectual property rights. In the case of patents, it requires both product and process patents for a period of 20 years. Process patent means the particular process used for developing a product. For example, paracetamol. It can be produced using many processes. Each of such processes can be patented. Product means the final product that we buy. Next slide. Yeah. As I said, the monopoly patent rights have given rise to some major concerns, and the WTO TRIPS agreement is providing some mechanisms to address such concerns. One is the compulsory license provision. The agreement is saying that the governments in certain circumstances can limit the exercise of monopoly right of the patent holder. Each country can decide the circumstances in which compulsory license can be granted. So that is one major provision. The second one is the TRIPS agreement recognizes the problem of the likely anti-competitive practices that may emerge out of patent rights. And it is also providing that members can enact legislations to counter anti-competitive practices. So we have a Competition Act in India. Similarly, many countries have established legislations to promote competition or to curtail anti-competitive practices. And third major provision is the provision for revocation or forfeiture of patents. As I said, the state is giving a monopoly period because the innovations benefit the society, but the monopoly involves a social cost. So this agreement is providing for a mechanism to review patents granted at a later stage. And if it is found that the patents was granted on false grounds, then it allows countries to revoke the granted patents. So these are the three major provisions which the TRIPS agreement provides for addressing the concerns arising out of patent monopoly. Can we go to the next slide? So given this background of intellectual property rights and patents, I want to discuss three issues in my presentation on Indian pharmaceutical industry. The first question is patent alone sufficient to create innovative products? Suppose we put in place a very strong patent regime. So will that necessarily bring in new innovative products? That is first one. Second one, what role does the state need to play to create an environment in which innovations can flourish? So the innovations can occur in an environment. And what role does the state need to play in creating such an environment? And third one, how the pricing of patented products is done. Next one. Now let me take back to the situation when we got independence. See, now we take a lot of pride in Indian pharmaceutical industry. So let us see what was the situation when we got independence in 1947. At that point of time, the medicine situation was extremely bad in India. Essential medicines were not available. Whatever medicines available were extremely highly priced, which people could not afford. And many of the essential medicines, although they were available in the international market, they were not supplied in India. Essential medicines were not available in India, although they were available in foreign countries. There was a famous committee of US Senate which was mandated to compare medicine prices across different countries. And the committee submitted the report in 1961. And it found that in the case of antibiotics, the price of medicines in India was one of the highest in the world. Imagine this was the situation in 1950s and 60s. The primary reason for this was the patent system we had at that point of time. In 1911, the British had introduced the product patent law in India. So the pharmaceuticals were also subjected to product patents. So we had a very strong product patent regime at that time, and it prevented the foreign companies which held the patent rights, prevented Indian companies from manufacturing and supplying on the one hand, and on the other, they themselves were not willing to supply them in India. So the patent system existed at that point of time was the major reason for this situation existed at that time. And the government of India, one second. Yeah, and 90% of medicines, whatever available in India, were imported. And Indian companies, whatever existed at that time, they were focusing only on medicines which were produced from plants. So that was the scenario of Indian companies at that point of time. Next slide. So the government realized that there is an urgent need of developing an indigenous pharma industry, but it required a lot of resources in terms of expertise, technology capability, financial resources. The government thought, since foreign companies already have them, let us invite them to develop an indigenous pharma industry. So the 1948 Industrial Policy Resolution precisely said that, precisely encouraged foreign companies to establish manufacturing facilities in India, start producing here, and supply medicines at reasonable prices. But the MNCs did not listen to that, and they were not interested in manufacturing in India. They continued to import and supply. And government also made an attempt to establish a penicillin manufacturing unit with the help of World Health Organization. It brought to light the number of challenges facing on account of patent rights. In that background, the government appointed a committee headed by Iyengar to study the patent law of India and make recommendations. Next one. Yeah. So the Iyengar committee observed that ensuring availability of medicines and food and supplying them at reasonable prices is the responsibility of the state, and therefore the patent law of India should be subjected to a major reform. Based on the recommendations of this committee, India abolished the product patent system and introduced process patent system in 1970 through the Patents Act 1970. It also reduced the number of patent years from 14 to 7. So that way, we did a major overhaul of the patent system in 1970. So now, Indian companies could produce drugs which were patented abroad, but not patented in India, using a new manufacturing process. Next one. Now, the issue is that we have brought in a new patent system. Is that enough for the development of an indigenous pharma industry? See, let us look at the essential elements of an innovation ecosystem. The patent system will work efficiently and effectively only when there is a conducive innovation ecosystem. That ecosystem will consist of many elements, and some of the elements are a thriving industry. There should be many firms, an industry which is having many firms. So a thriving industry, it is a requirement. Then human resources. We need people who are capable of doing research and development activities. So the human resources component is very important. Then R&D institutions. The R&D done by the private sector enterprises, that will mostly be oriented on applications, but we also need R&D in basic research. Such research will be carried out normally by the R&D institutions, especially at the public sector. So therefore, we need a combination of all these factors coming together simultaneously. It's only then a patent policy will make sense. Let us see how the government at that point of time created such an conducive innovation ecosystem. The initial step the government made was to assign a leadership role to the public sector. Two major public sector pharma companies were established: Indian Drugs and Pharmaceuticals Limited and Hindustan Antibiotics Limited. These companies were established with the assistance of foreign technology. USSR, the predecessor of current Russia, supported IDPL, and the Merck company of United States supported HAL. But as we know, the Cold War was at its peak at that point of time, and Russia did not want IDPL to use US technology, and similarly, US did not want to use USSR technology in HAL. But government found a way out by transferring key technology personnel operating in one public sector company to the other. So normally the technicians operating in a company would know the details of the technology, and as that technology person moves to another company, his knowledge will also be transferred to that company. So that way, the government found a way out for the transfer of technology between the public sector pharmaceutical companies. That is one aspect. Then there was also a movement of key personnel from public sector companies to private sector companies. Dr. Reddy's is a famous company established by Dr. Anji Reddy. So he died a few years before. So he was working with IDPL. Then he moved to Dr. Reddy's. So we see the technology, the knowledge moving from public sector to private sector companies. Not only that, we also need people who can do research and development activities. For that, the government and the public sector companies collaborated with universities to develop appropriate curriculum that is required by the pharmaceutical industry. And we see a pharmaceutical clusters developing around IDPL in Hyderabad and HAL in Mumbai and Pune. So this is how the government is creating an ecosystem that is suitable for the development of an indigenous industry. Next one. We also needed more and more technologies. So what the government did, so we have the CSIR framework, and there are a number of institutions, research institutions under CSIR framework. Some of them exclusively focus on drug research: Central Drug Research Institute, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, and National Chemical Laboratory. They all developed new process technologies required by the industry and transferred such technologies to the industry, which helped the public sector companies. And the people working in these public sector laboratories, they also moved to private sector companies. So this is how overall the technology development is happening and the dissemination of technology is happening. All this was orchestrated by the government. So the government played a very critical role in developing an ecosystem where an indigenous pharma industry can grow. Next one. As a result of all these concerted efforts of government, we see the emergence of a competent pharma industry by late 80s and early 90s. One manifestation of such competence was the technology developed by Ranbaxy. Cefaclo was a drug patented by Eli Lilly, and the drug was protected by 70 different processes. But Ranbaxy identified a new process, a 71st process, which was a much superior one, and for the development of that drug. This forced Eli Lilly to enter into a collaboration with Ranbaxy. Similarly, ciprofloxacin, that medicine was developed by Bayer. The tablet had to be consumed many times a day, so the ensuring patients' compliance was quite difficult. But Ranbaxy developed another form of that drug, which patients needed to consume only once. So this is much beneficial for the patients. They need to take tablets only once. So these are some of the manifestations of the competence the Indian pharma industry acquired through the interventions of the government of India. Next one. So what is the final outcome of all those measures? The production increased from 10 crore in 1947 to close to 1500 crore in 1881. The share of domestic sector increased from 10% to more than 50%. Medicines were made available in India within 5 years of their introduction in the global market. And most importantly, the price of medicines in India became one of the lowest in the world. And now Indian pharma industry is known as the pharmacy of the world. And we all take pride in that. And Indian pharma industry became self-sufficient. And it also became a net foreign exchange earner. Means it is exporting much more than what is importing. Can we go to the next slide? So now things began to change from 2005. In 2005, we amended our 1970 Patents Act to introduce product patents in pharmaceuticals. Actually, the Indian pharma industry was not prepared to go for a product patents, but it was imposed on India by the WTO. India had no other option but to go for this amendment if India had to remain as a party of World Trade Organization. So it was with much hesitation that India decided to go for the product patent system in 2005. India complied with the requirements of TRIPS agreement by undertaking 3 amendments, and the last amendment was in 2005. So by 2005, Indian patent regime became fully compliant with the WTO requirements. So now we provide patent protection for both processes and products. Next one. So what is the impact of the new product patent regime, the new patent regime? So generally, it is argued that introduction of product patents in pharmaceuticals will encourage firms to invest more in R&D. So that is the main argument in support of product patents. But now what we see is that foreign companies operating in India, they invest very less in R&D. In fact, it's less than 1% of their sales turnover. And Indian pharmaceutical companies, they mostly focus on generics. That means the drugs which are not patented. And only a very few companies allot resources for R&D for new chemical entities. New chemical entity means it's a molecule for new drug. So far, India has developed only one new chemical entity, that is by Cydus cadila. And if we take the patents granted, about 90% of the patent granted is to foreigners, and it's only 10 to 12% it's goes to the Indians. So what I'm trying to say is that India taking benefit of the new patent system, we do not see that. Next one. So here also we need to have government intervention like it did previously. The drug R&D, it requires huge financial resources. There are different estimates on the financial resources required for new drug R&D. The latest estimate is that it requires 2.6 billion US dollar. It's a huge amount. Indian companies will not be able to allocate that kind of resources for new drug R&D. And so here we should have some scheme to give concessional loans or things like that to the companies which are willing to invest. There were some initiatives at some point of time by the private investors to support pharma R&D, but as they found that it involves huge risk, they did not continue with that. So the situation is that the private investors are not, the private funders are not keen to support the pharmaceuticals R&D for new drug research. And we also need to strengthen our capabilities to equip our companies to do more R&D in pharmaceuticals. We require more advanced chemistry skills, genetics, and artificial intelligence. So with the new technologies, especially the artificial intelligence and all, the way research is done is also changing. There are companies based in US, UK, China, they use artificial intelligence in a major way to do R&D. This will reduce cost considerably and it will reduce time also. But the firms based in India, they are not yet in a position to use these technologies. So here, the government should play an active role to create an ecosystem where the companies will be able to, where such skills are generated and companies will be able to utilize them. So here we need a massive intervention of the government if we have to equip Indian companies to do R&D for the development of new drugs. Next one. Now let us see how the prices of patented medicines are decided. In a normal market situation, the demand and supply conditions will determine the price. But in the case of patented products, that is not the case. I will give one example. Nexavar. It is a patented medicine, anti-cancer drug by Bayer. A month's treatment would cost about 2,80,000 rupees, close to 3 lakh rupees for 1 month's treatment. How many of the people in India will be able to afford such a treatment? But what government did in this particular case, it issued a compulsory license to NATCO saying that this drug is not affordable, and NATCO supplied that drug at cost of 8,800 per one month's treatment. Here, Bayer would argue that it needed that price to recoup the investment it has made for R&D. But one major issue is that there is no transparency in terms of how much a company has invested in R&D. Bayer would say, I have spent huge amount, but it would not give the details. In this case, when the hearing for the compulsory license was going on, Bayer said it spent 2.5 billion US dollar for the as R&D for this drug. But another organization based in US, it analyzed the case and found that that is not so, and the actual investment is much less. So what I'm saying is that there is no transparent system to assess how much a company has invested in R&D, because this is used as a pretext to charge exorbitant prices, but there is no system to verify such claims. Next one. Now there is a tendency to securitize patents. We know that physical assets can easily be monetized. In a similar way, there is an emerging trend for the monetization of IPs, including patents. A recent phenomenon is that many investment funds have emerged, which will purchase the IP from the IP holders, and it will sell or license to manufacturers. So a trading industry has emerged to manage IP. IP has become a tradable commodity. So now this industry, this IP trading industry, it is estimated at 200 billion US dollar annually. It may benefit innovators because there is somebody to buy their IP. But the issue is that the huge return is made by the investment funds, not the actual innovators. The philosophy of patent system is that it should benefit the innovator. But with the new emerging trend, bulk of the benefit is going to the investment funds, not really the innovators in all circumstances. Here the problem is that the consumers will have to pay a lot for the innovative products because a lot of rent is going in the trading activity. The investment funds will be recouping a lot of money as profits, which ultimately the consumers will have to pay. So this is the emerging situation. Major issue this monetization of patents is facing is that, as I said, the patent system provides for revocation of patents. So there is a possibility that a patent may be revoked in future. That is not the case with physical assets. If we have a physical assets, it has value all the time. But a patent will not have any value if it is revoked. So always there is the possibility of revocation of patents. So that is one major issue facing the monetization of patents. So these are the major issues I wanted to cover in this talk. So we discussed, I raised three questions. The first one was whether patent system alone is sufficient. One second. Yeah, patent system alone is sufficient to create new products? Not so. That is what we have seen from India's experience at the time of independence. We had a product patent regime, but we did not have new medicines. So the patent system alone is not sufficient. And the second one was, what role does state need to play? And we have seen the state has an important role, and the state should continue to play that role. Unfortunately, in India, after 1991, the state is not actively playing a role. That is why we see the R&D spending of India is still less than 1%. It's one of the lowest in the world. So the role of government in creating and conducive innovation ecosystem is a continuous process. And the third issue was how the pricing of patented products is done. Definitely, it is not the demand supply factor, it is the monopoly pricing, which the consumers will have to pay. It's a huge price. It's not the demand supply price, it's monopoly price. Thank you.
Now it's time for Q&A. If you have any questions, you can raise, or you can type in the chat box. There's a question. Can you name few medicines patented in India with their cost?
See, I cannot, as of now, easily say, but one is that Nexavar, that example I gave, no, it was 2,80,000 per 1 month's treatment. It's anti-cancer drug. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Any other doubts? So shall I read it from the chat box? In the pharmaceutical sector also, we also see a global production chain developing with activities such as API being outsourced to China. What is India's position in the pharmaceutical value chain?
Yeah, it's not only in API. Many of the Indian companies, they are part of the value chain of MNC. So they engage in contract manufacturing. So the medicine would be manufactured by Indian companies. It would be exported to the foreign companies. Then they would be distributing. So that is contract manufacturing. Then there is joint marketing. So the drug of a foreign company would be marketed in India by an Indian company, and joint R&D. The R&D is also done jointly by Indian companies and foreign companies. But in the case of this joint R&D, the issue is that in most cases, I have seen only one or two exceptions, but in most cases, the intellectual property will be held by the foreign company. The Indian companies would be doing R&D, they would be getting some remuneration, but the crux of the R&D activity, that is the IP generated out of that research, that will be held by the foreign companies. So we are in the value chain in different forms. In R&D, we are part. In production, we are part. In marketing, we are part.
I hope it's okay for Shruti. Sir, in continuation to the question asked previously regarding the cost of patented medicine, Gopal Dabade is asking, but the price of Nexavar is less now.
Okay, the recent prices I haven't checked. I need to check that.
Okay. So Dr. Venugopalan KV is asking, what is your opinion about the pricing of COVID-19 antivirus vaccine?
So actually in India, we haven't seen any vaccine coming up so far. So we do not have any situation where prices have been fixed. But the company, the one company has said that it would sell the drug at about $2 per dose.
So, Geetika Briti is asking, so how can a country like India, which has a huge OOP and also export generic medicine, balances the pros and cons of patenting?
What is that question? Can you repeat it again?
How can a country like India, which is a huge OOP and OOP and also export generic medicine, balance the pros and cons of patenting?
See, hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Yeah. See, at the time of when India went for this product patent system, a major concern was that whether Indian companies will be able to export and whether imports will increase. But we haven't seen a situation where export is declining, because many of the drugs which were patented their patent expired in the last decade. So this was a major boost for Indian companies, and they started exporting generics. The another factor is that although we have gone for product patents, we have put in place a system where only meritorious innovations will be patented, not frivolous innovations. We have a section called Section 3D. Because of this section, a number of patents have been avoided. I would say unnecessary patents have been avoided. So this has given more space for Indian companies. So because of that, the import also hasn't increased the way we had apprehended when we had gone for product patent system.
Okay, thank you, sir. Shabad Danish is asking, what will be the future of pharma industry if India completely stopped buying API from China?
See, now India has recently launched a scheme for the promotion of domestic manufacturing of APIs. But what I feel is that I do not know whether the companies would be very keen to avail that scheme, because now, as I said, Indian companies are very much part of this global value chains. They export more. So they will invest or they will avail the scheme only if they feel that they will be able to ultimately produce at a price that is cheaper than what the Chinese price is. Currently, the price of Chinese APIs, it's about 40% lower as compared to the price, the cost of production in India. Now, the schemes which the government has initiated, there is nothing substantial that will enable Indian companies for reducing cost. To give one example, Chinese companies use new technologies that reduces cost. We need to develop new technologies. We don't have ready technology available. We need to develop them. So who will develop? Even if they develop, the Chinese firms are also doing R&D. They may be able to come out with more cheaper technologies that will make production cheaper. So there is a kind of business insecurities existing. So this is, in my view, will prevent many companies from availing the schemes declared by the government. So I do not know to what extent this is going to be successful. And unless we are able to pitch in the public sector companies, but so far the mood of the government has been in favor of selling public sector companies than you strategically utilizing them for meeting these kinds of challenges.
Thank you, sir. Sinoj Ovi is asking, what is the role of government to reduce the price of medicines for severe diseases and make it available at affordable prices to the lower income groups?
See, now most of the essential medicines we use, the price is controlled. There is a system for controlling the price of medicines. So that is why many of the medicines we use, it's not very high priced. But there are a number of medicines in disease areas like cancer, cardiovascular diseases, where there are many patented drugs available in the market. And we do not have any system for controlling the price of such drugs. There is always a demand from the civil society groups to put those drugs also under price control policy. But always there is a threat from foreign countries, especially United States, and the government is not willing to make those drugs as part of the price control system. So that is why in some therapeutic areas, we see the price of medicines very high. In my view, there should be some measures to check the price of such medicines also.
Sir, Irfan Ibrahim K. Ibrahim is asking, how is compulsory licensing in patent affecting the freedom of persons' right to develop new technology?
See, I don't think a person's the right to innovate is in any way affected by compulsory licenses, because this is somebody is innovating something, the government is giving a monopoly right, but the government has also the objective to ensure that such innovations or the products of innovations is affordable to the society. If it is not affordable, the government cannot sit quiet, because we are living in a social system. So we should have innovations on the one side. On the other side, the people should be able to benefit from such innovations. So here, when that is not meeting, the government will have to intervene in the form of compulsory licenses. So I don't think this in any way is going to affect the right of the innovator.
So next question is again from Gopal Dabade. He's asking, why is India not granting compulsory license?
Not granting.
Yes, sir, not granting compulsory license.
Okay. I think he is very familiar about that, but let me explain that. India has granted only one compulsory license, which I explained in my presentation. There were a few applications made by Indian pharma companies for issuing compulsory license, but the government never expressed the willingness to grant a compulsory license. This is primarily because the US is always threatening India that you are granting compulsory license, our companies are affected. So what you are doing is not a proper thing. So there is always a threat coming from the United States, and United States has a mechanism that is called a Special 301, which enables the United States to take actions against those countries which it finds us violating or it's not meeting IPR standards as per US expectations. The US has been threatening, saying that if you issue more compulsory licenses, we'll be taking actions against you. And there were some reports suggesting that India has secretly agreed to US industry and US government that it will no longer issue compulsory license. Whatever may be the case, but the government is saying it hasn't given any such assurance. But the fact is that after the first compulsory license, no more compulsory license is issued.
So next question is from Ajit Jogi of Central University of Hyderabad is asking, in case of coping or taking of tribal traditional knowledge, pharma companies' R&D costs would be less. So why if the pharma companies are taking coping with the traditional knowledge of pharma company, the R&D cost would be less. So why is pharma companies not in? So why is a pharma company including full cost of R&D in the drug price?
Actually, there is some disturbance. So can you repeat the last part of the question? Hello?
Oh my. Sir, so why pharma company is including full R&D cost in drug price?
See, this is what the pharma companies are saying. We have spent so much on R&D. Because of that, we need to charge because of that, we need to set the price at very high level. This is what they are arguing. But there is no evidence provided by them that we have spent this much for the development of a particular drug. So that is what I said in my presentation. There is the issue of transparency. Nobody knows how much investment, how much money has gone into the development of a drug.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Venugopalan KV is asking anything about the agreement between Gilead Science Incorporation and Indian pharmaceutical company Cipla and other regarding the antiviral vaccine.
Which scientific corporation?
So Gilead and Cipla.
Gilead?
Sir, the biotechnology company.
Yeah. So, see now with the COVID situation, actually there is a clamor globally among the public health activists and civil society organizations to issue more and more compulsory licenses for those drugs which are used to treat the COVID conditions. And this remdesivir, which is patented by Glivec, is one such drug used for treating COVID conditions. And now Glivec has entered into voluntary license with some of the Indian companies, where it has allowed Indian companies to manufacture and sell that drug. And one of the licensees is Cipla. So Cipla has a license from Glivec to produce and supply that drug.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
If Glivec had not entered into such a license agreement, probably there would have been a stronger demand. There would have been a stronger circumstances in which there would have been a demand for issuing a compulsory license. Probably the company wanted to avoid that situation.
Thank you, sir. In which category you consider the foreign pharma companies in Indian market? Is it for technology seeking, exploiting, or creating? From Aparna Sharma.
I was going through some of the annual reports of foreign pharma companies, which they submit to Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So I have downloaded those annual reports and I was going through them. Some of the companies, they have manufacturing units and R&D units here. It is basically to develop generics. That is one thing. So that their R&D is primarily for the development of generics and manufacturing. They also do manufacturing here for their parent firm. So they have a network of affiliated firms. They do the manufacturing here, then they would supply it to their network firms. That is one thing, the manufacturing. Second thing is R&D, but that is for generics. Now the situation is that till last decade or 2 decades before, the foreign MNCs they were almost exclusively into the development of new chemical entities. Now the situation has changed. It is quite difficult to develop new chemical entities. The pipeline, the number of pipeline, it has declined. So many of them, they have also entered into the business of generic drugs. And they know that Indian pharma industry, in India, there is a good ecosystem existing for the development of generic drugs. And they have established R&D units here for the development of generics, better technologies for the development of generics. And I don't think they are doing significant R&D for the development of new drugs in India, which they could do in their own countries. They need not do it in India.
Thank you, sir. Sir Alok Kumar is asking, what is the impact of Make in India program on pharmaceutical industries?
See, so far I haven't seen any positive impact of Make in India policy on the in the pharma sector. See, now with the COVID situation and the API scenario coming out, it seems some firms have expressed their willingness to establish API manufacturing units in India, because they want to shift from China, so they prefer India. So that is only a limited case. Otherwise, I do not see any major impact of Make in India policy on the pharma sector.
So the last question, whether paracetamol is patented or not? If not, what was the reason? What is the reason?
No, it is not patented now. See, now this patent is for a limited period, a maximum of 20 years. Once that period is over, it becomes off patent.
I hope there is no further question. Now let me propose vote of thanks on behalf of PG and Research Department of Commerce, St. Peter's College, Kolanjeri, and Intellectual Property Rights Cell, the IP Cell of St. Peter's College. Let me thank all those good hearts who helped us in the successful conduct of the program. I thank our principal, Dr. Shaju Varghese, our HOD, Dr. Venugopalan KV, for their wholehearted support, the India teaching fraternity of the Department of Commerce for their heartfelt thanks. Hearty thanks to our honorable and really humble chief guest, Dr. Rejike Joseph, Associate Professor, ISID, for this graceful morning. Thank you, sir, for giving us an opportunity to hear your thoughts and knowledge regarding the role of patents in the pharmaceutical industry. I hope you will associate with us in our further endeavors also. I also keep on record my hearty thanks to my colleague, Dr. Basil B. Matthew, HOD of Political Science and Coordinator of the Intellectual Property Rights Cell of the college, for introducing the guest and for all his contribution towards the webinar. Let me also thank the young and vibrant professors of our department, Ms. Animal Anthony and Vinu Matthew, for their support. A special love and blessing to our PG student, Mr. Alvin, for his timeless help. I also thank all the participants for your patient listening. Hope we could meet in another webinar. Thank you. Thank you. one and all. The meeting is dispersed.
Thank you, Professor Ambili. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.